Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sackur. Iran's Islamic Republic has been in firefighting mode for months, trying to damp down the flames of mass protest sparked by the killing of a 22-year-old woman in police custody. Her name was Mahsa Amini. At least that was her Persian name. Her Kurdish birth name was Gina. The story of Iran's internal discontent is incomplete without an understanding of Iran's Kurdish population. My guest is Abdullah Mohtadi, leader of the Komala party of Iranian Kurdistan. Is his a fight for rights or for independence? Abdullah Mohtadi, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure to have you on the show. I began by referring there to the tragic death of Mahsa Amini. Would you say that her death last September in custody inside Iran has changed the political dynamic inside Iran?
It has, because on the 16th of September, she was declared dead in the hospital. The day after, on the 17th, there was a funeral in her hometown of Sackur in the province of Kurdistan. There are 4 Kurdish provinces in Iran, and it was a spontaneous protest movement erupted in Sackur, her hometown, and it soon spread to Sanandaj, the capital city of that province. And 2 days after that, on the 19th, it was a general strike called by Cooperation Center of Kurdish Political Parties, which was fully observed. And after that, they called for peaceful evening demonstrations. And it was a resounding victory, because in dozens of cities in all 4 Kurdish provinces, there was huge demonstrations that soon spread to all of Iran.
Well, that is exactly what I wanted to pick up with you. So your contention is that it's very important to understand that the immediate response, the immediate public protest to what happened to Mahsa, and we could also call her Gina, her Kurdish name,
yes,
it was very much a Kurdish response.
It was. We sparked the revolution, or the movement. Many people still call it revolution, because it's about the regime change, the toppling of the regime, not about reform. Anyway, we provided the main slogan, Jinjian Azadi, woman, life and freedom. And
well, we all know that slogan, but surely the point of that slogan is that it was co-opted by the Persian language, and that the mass demonstrations across Iran, from Tehran to Isfahan to so many other cities, were chanting it in Persian, not in Kurdish.
It doesn't matter. Of course, people chant in a language that they are familiar with, but the content was the same. We provided this main slogan, and we remained the stronghold of the revolution. We kept the momentum of the revolution for months.
Well, you called it a revolution. The truth is, 8.5 months on, there has been no revolution. Indeed, the protests are dying down on the streets of most Iranian towns and cities. That's the reality. You are right.
It has been died down, but everybody thinks that this is just a calm before a new wave of storm in Iran.
Well, the Iranian regime doesn't think that. In fact, we've got senior officials saying that they believe that the number of hardcore protesters never rose beyond about 500,000. Now, that's a very significant number, but if we remember that Iran's population is currently around 80 million, then it's not quite so great. And Hamid Reza Taraghi, an influential hardline supporter of the regime, he says let's face it, most of the protesters were simply youths who were deceived through social media. That's the official position now.
No, that's not true. The social, economic and political reasons behind these protests are well known for the people. People were that dissatisfied with the corruption, with mismanagement, high inflation rate, suppression, unbearable discrimination against women by imposing lifestyles to the young generation that they refuse to obey. So the reasons are...
Well, all of those reasons you've just given are fascinating. Obviously, they would be aggressively disputed by the Tehran regime. But my interest is that those reasons for protest you've just outlined don't include going out on the streets demanding greater rights for the Kurdish people. Maybe the Kurdishness of the origins of this protest movement, as you put it, have been lost.
No. In fact, the Kurds came to this revolution hoping that while they are for a broader democracy in Iran, at the same time their rights will be preserved, their rights will be recognized by the society, by the new constitution, by the new system in Iran.
What you have said about the origins of the protest movement were taken on board by the Islamic Republic military forces, in the sense that they focused a lot of their most repressive activities on the Kurdish region, and indeed reached across the border into Iraq, where your Komala party has its headquarters. How badly damaged have you been in the last 8 or 9 months by this new aggressive, assertive Iranian military action?
We take the Iranian threats against our bases and our families and our settlements very, very seriously. But this is not the first time they threat us, or they threaten us, or they attack us. The latest was on the 28th of September. They wanted to distract the attention of the movement, and they want to lure the Kurdish groups into an armed struggle, which we resisted.
Yeah, but what they did do is they sent, and I'm just looking at their reports from official Iranian media, precision-guided missiles, assault drones hitting targets that belong to your party and other Kurdish Iranian parties. How can you withstand that?
They killed 17 people, including a pregnant woman and her unborn child, and injured dozens of people. But we've been accustomed to these kinds of attacks by the Iranians. Of course, we pay a price for that, but we have no choice except to resist.
Yeah, the problem you have is that you are dependent upon the hospitality, if I can put it that way, of Iraq, and in particular the Kurdish regional government in Iraq. And it does seem over recent months, because of the pressure, the military pressure being applied by Iran, that the Kurdish regional government in Iraq has agreed with Tehran that you must be expelled, your operations disbanded inside Iraq.
We have not been engaged in any kind of armed struggle or infiltrating armed teams into Iran. So this is a lie.
Well, hang on, it's not a lie that you keep so-called Peshmerga guerrilla fighters in bases inside Iraq.
Yes, but it's only because of exclusively for our self-defense. Because if you cannot protect yourself, they come for you.
How many Peshmergas do you have?
I can't tell you, but enough to defend ourselves, our bases in Iraqi Kurdistan. During the past 3 decades, more than 400 people, our members and other parties' members, were assassinated, poisoned, killed, kidnapped by Iranian agents. You have to protect yourself. You have to have the means to protect yourself. But this is not intended for an armed struggle against the Iranian regime, and they know it, and we have not provoked them at all.
Well, you say they know it, but they appear to regard you as a terrorist organization. Now, back in October of 2022, it was reported from Iran and Iraqi sources that there was an agreement reached that you would be forced out of your bases in Kurdish areas of Iraq, and the representative of the Kurdish regional government, the Iraqi Kurds, in Tehran, Mr. Nazim Dabakh, he said that Iranian Kurdish dissident groups must now evacuate from our region near the border with Iran. If they refuse to comply, he said, Iran has told us that it will, quote, consider other options to end their presence.
This is not what we hear from the people in charge of the KRG, Kurdistan region of Iraq.
What do they say to you then?
They say they want to have put limits on our activities, our presence, but not expelling us. Because
what do they mean by limits?
Well, they want guarantees that we won't go into Iranian soil, and we accepted it. In fact, we haven't been engaged in that for many years now, more than 25 years.
Would you say that, in a sense, effectively, Iran's military operations and its threats, to put it bluntly, have neutralized your activities inside Iraq?
We are in good friendly relations with KRG. We respect each other. We do not interfere in each other's domestic affairs. And we, as I told you before, we have not been engaged in any military or armed struggle against Iran for many, many years, even before these limitations.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk now about the efforts that you have been involved with personally to create a sort of united front of Iranian opposition groups capable of presenting a coherent alternative to the Islamic Republic regime. Now, there was an agreement drawn up in the United States, in Georgetown, and you've become known as the Georgetown Group. It included not just your own Komala group, but the group led by the exiled son of the former Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, and a whole host of others with different political orientations, but all in exile. You came out with a joint declaration talking about your commitment to freedom and democracy in Iran. And then within weeks, that Georgetown Group started to fall apart. It wasn't very impressive, was it?
People in the streets, activists, protesters, both inside and outside the country, wanted us to form a strong, united opposition coalition. So we responded positively to their demand with good intentions. The aim was to form a strong, united opposition coalition to give people hope in Iran, give a sense of direction to the movement, and also represent the Iranian aspirations in their fight for democracy to the international community.
Well, you say the intentions were good, but the reality was somewhat less impressive. You signed this sort of pact in February, but by April, if I may just continue, by April, Reza Pahlavi, for example, and indeed another key leader of this Georgetown group, had actually left. What happened?
There were all kinds of pressures. It's not easy to stand the pressure for everybody.
Isn't the truth that you just didn't really have a shared vision for a future in Iran? For example, many of the people around Mr. Pahlavi, frankly, would like to see the return of the monarchy. There are people in your group who are more concerned with safeguarding Kurdish rights through a highly federalized future system,
Yes.
which is anathema to many Iranian nationalists. And when you put all of these people together, there simply isn't a coherent, unified position.
But we were able to sign a charter which was reasonably good and balanced, where we declared our program for democratizing Iran, a new system, a new constitution, a new referendum for the people to decide the future of their own government, and also minority, ethnic, religious rights.
It sounded pretty impressive on paper.
Very progressive.
But my point is that it didn't last more than 2 months before several of the key people who signed it had walked away from it. It's just not credible, is it? And Iranians, both inside the country and outside the country, see that in the end, the opposition remains divided.
But the necessity for a united opposition is still there. And it's a burning question. You have to fight for that. Maybe one or two of your efforts fail or does not succeed as you want it. But the necessity is there, and the efforts should continue.
One of the key questions of particular relevance to you in the Kurdish Iranian community is, what is your long-term agenda? Do you ultimately see yourselves as part of a federalized Iran, free, democratic, but with much of the power decentralized to your own particular region, in your case? Or is your long-term aspiration an independent Kurdistan?
Historically, Kurds were denied the right to self-determination. But our program, and other parties as well, our program is a secular, democratic, federal Iran, where the rights of Kurds and other ethnic minorities are respected and safeguarded, not just by paying lip service, but by being enshrined in the constitution.
But a future inside Iran, not separate from Iran.
Inside Iran, yes.
See, I'm very mindful of your own personal history. Your father was intimately involved with that very short-lived moment in 1946, where the Kurds of Iran thought they had created their own state of Mahabad, and the Soviet Union at the time appeared to sign off on that, but then of course by the end of 46 the Shah had completely destroyed that reality. But your father wanted an independent Kurdistan.
I do not deny the legitimate aspirations and dreams of the Kurdish people, and I don't decide for the future generations. But our program for the foreseeable future, for this generation, and we are responsible for this generation only, is a federal state where the rights of Kurds are preserved within Iran, within a democratic, secular Iran.
That's a very interesting phrase you just used with me, for the foreseeable future. I wonder what Iranian nationalists, people who live far, far away from the northwest of Iran, from the Kurdish regions, what they would make of that phrase, for the foreseeable future. Because it sounds like it could be a recipe for long-term instability in Iran.
No. You can, in fact, by respecting the diversity in Iran, diversity of ethnic and religious and cultural, linguistic diversity, in fact, you guarantee the territorial integrity of Iran. You guarantee that people live together. We have to accept each other. You have to strike a delicate balance between the aspirations and the rights of the Kurdish people on the one side, and at the same time you have to consider the concerns of other people in Iran, the Persian-speaking people, the people who live in Tehran and other cities. So I think respecting diversity is the key to stability in the future of Iran.
Just one quick point on this broad coalition of exiled opposition groups that you say must come together to present an alternative vision of Iran's future. Can it include the son of the former Shah, Reza Pahlavi, whom some in your community accuse of basically having a prejudicial attitude toward the Kurds and their aspirations? And can it also include the Mujahideen al-Khalq, led by Maryam Rajavi, who many, both in Iran and in the West, regard as somebody politically beyond the pale?
For Mujahideen Khalq, they have to accept and abide by the rules of democratic game in Iran. They have to open up to and be ready to cooperate with others.
But you would be ready to work with them, would you? Despite their reputation, despite all of the alliances that they formed in the past with Saddam Hussein, despite the allegations that they oppressed the Kurds of Iraq, you would consider working with the Mujahideen al-Khalq?
I'm not sure that they will cooperate with anybody.
Mm. And just a quick thought on Reza Pahlavi and whether he is a credible partner?
He was considered a credible partner, but he quit. And I'm not sure that next time he will want to be included in any coalition.
Let's just, before we end, talk about diplomacy. You spend a lot of your life on the road in Washington, in Brussels, in all sorts of political capitals, trying to rally support both for the Kurdish Iranian position, but also for the wider sense of an opposition to the Islamic regime. The Iranians say, actually, you have become a puppet of Israel, and that there is evidence that you send agents working for Israel to Iran on sabotage missions. Is this true?
No, it's not true. The Iranian regime have always tried to portray the Iranian Kurds as violent secessionists, agents of foreign countries. This is a lie. And they accuse everybody, whoever is dissident, whoever has a critical point about the regime, as being agents of Israel and the United States and Britain, of course.
Do you have any talks with Israeli officials?
No.
Never?
Never.
You never have had?
No.
At all?
As far as I'm concerned, as far as I know.
Well, what about other associates in your party, Komala?
No, I don't think so.
And just briefly on the United States, you were in Washington last October. You said, I am worried about the pressures that are exerted against us inside Iraq, and we've discussed that. And you said, I would very much like the United States to intervene. Really? You want US intervention? I mean, after everything that's happened in recent years?
No. Let's be clear, not in Iran, not militarily.
No, but even in Iraq, you want them to help you in Iraq, do you? I mean, how would that look to Iranians, or indeed to Iraqis?
Yes, we need the international protection, because Iran is killing us, our families, targeting our schools, our residents.
But you can't afford to be seen as puppets of Washington, can you?
Not puppets, but protected by the international coalition who are in Iraq. What's wrong with that? We have no other protection. And the KRG is not strong enough to protect us. So yes, we want the protection by the international coalition who are in Iraq. You are the United States.
You are a veteran of this diplomatic and political effort to change the reality in Iran. You've been at it for many years. You earlier talked to me about a revolution, but I said to you, well, it's a revolution that hasn't come to pass yet. Do you think it will come to pass in your lifetime?
I hope so. I'm sure that we will be witnessing new and greater waves of protest, eventually a revolution. And I hope it will take place in my lifetime.
Abdullah Mohtadi, I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a